Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, unwanted pets and relatives, greetings and hello. It is I, once again, your favorite undocumented social studies teacher with just above average looks, intelligence, and style, Mr. Palumbo, and this is the Professor Liberty Podcast. Thank you for tuning in, folks. You know I always appreciate it. I'm very thankful to all of you faithful followers across the fruited plains and even across the oceans beyond. If you're new to Professor Liberty, welcome. I hope this episode is entertaining, informative, and interesting enough to keep you coming back for more. If you'd like to email the show, the email is professorliberty1776@gmail.com. That's professorliberty1776@gmail.com. Send me your thoughts, your words, your opinions, your ideas, your stories, your tall tales, whatever you want. You just have to send it to professorliberty1776@gmail.com. Also, don't forget to follow us on Facebook. You can go over to X as well. And also, don't forget to check out professorliberty.com. Well, I hope everyone's doing well out there. It's almost Halloween out here in Vegas. It's, the best month in Las Vegas has got to be October. It's just beautiful out here. And man, oh man, have I had some interesting ideas swimming around in the old noggin. And today I wanted to talk about, I have no idea what to call this episode. Basically, the official title of the episode is From Factories to Algorithms, the Future of Human Work. But I want to talk today about the rise of AI, and I'm going to put a little historical context in this. So I want to talk about AI, but in the context of the Industrial Revolution. Something I tell my students that even though the second Industrial Revolution began after the Civil War, we're still living in the Industrial Revolution today. However, with this advent of AI, it seems safe to say that perhaps we're entering a third Industrial Revolution. So this is something I want to unpack today. Now, with the first two Industrial Revolutions that we lived through, humans adapted. They found different ways to survive. Old jobs went away, new jobs sprang up. Society had to rethink work and redefine purpose. Today, AI is that new technology that is going to revolutionize human society. And here's something we have to think about, folks. When new technology arises, it doesn't just change what we do, it changes who we are. For example, is it a correlation here where at the same time as the second industrial revolution was also when we became urbanized? Okay, so before the American Civil War, 90% of the people lived in rural communities. After the Civil War, into the early 1900s, now, today, 90% of the people live in urban communities. Is that a coincidence, or are they related? So let's just start with the basics here. Artificial intelligence isn't new. We've been living with it for years. Things like voice assistants, personalized ads, recommendation engines on Netflix. But what's the difference now? Well, now AI is doing things that we once believed only humans can do. And the scary thing is, where do these abilities stop? Is there going to be a limit to what AI can do? And if there isn't a limit, it gets a little scary. AI can write, it can code, it can diagnose disease, it can argue a case in law, it can create art. It can design buildings. It can write songs. It can even hold a halfway decent conversation with you as you would have coffee with a friend. And what we learned from the second industrial revolution with automation, things become cheaper. Things get faster to make, and they become more widely available. We're talking about technology on a scale that is near zero marginal cost. That's an economic game changer. But there's one thing. For most of our society, our income, our identity, our value was built around work. And this is something I want you guys to keep in mind throughout the episode. When technology like this comes along, the question has to be asked, if AI can do it, what will be left for us to do? So let's rewind the clock back to the late 19th century. The second industrial revolution, is moving along quite steadily. It was a time where steam engines, mechanized looms, and railroads transformed society at a breathtaking pace. For the first time, machines replaced humans and animal muscle at scale. Blacksmiths, weavers, and countless craft workers suddenly saw their trade vanish almost overnight. Does this sound familiar? Back then, anxiety and fear rippled through communities. The Luddites, which were a group of British textile workers, famously smashed textile machines, not because they hated technology itself, but because the technology destroyed their livelihood without offering a fair alternative. Today, AI is this new disruptive force. The difference is, instead of replacing muscle, AI is automating mental labor. Machines, like I said earlier, can now write essays, compose music. Jobs that once required years of education and creativity are now being done by algorithms. And this is going to have a much deeper disruption. The Industrial Revolution didn't just eliminate jobs, though. It created whole new industries and roles in manufacturing, engineering, and logistics. And we talk about this in class. A lot of times on the board, we will put the causes and effects of the Industrial Revolution. And in both of the columns, if you will, we'll put jobs lost, and then on the other side, we'll put jobs created. However, is this going to happen again? So as these factories sprang up, also cities boomed. Middle class grew. Living standards rose over time. But in the short term, it was brutal. Workers faced 12-hour shifts, dangerous conditions, child labor, and grinding poverty. The wealth was generated mostly through factory owners and capitalists. This is known in American history as the Gilded Age. Now, how did society adapt? Well, they formed unions. They fought back. They had labor strikes for safety conditions, fair pay, sometimes at great personal risk. They had the progressive reforms that pushed public education, child labor laws, social protections. New political philosophies sprang up like socialism, which sought to give more power to the workers, right? Now, we know socialism as practice comes with its own failures, including authoritarianism and repression. So it's definitely not something we advocate here on Professor Liberty, but I'm just trying to point out that as these new technologies arose, society adapted and came up with ideas and strategies, and there was eventually some kind of consensus or some kind of homeostasis that was able to arise. Let's fast forward to today. The parallels are striking. AI is automating mental labor at a speed that dwarfs the Industrial Revolution. While new jobs will emerge, many won't be accessible to those displaced. Retraining a 50-year-old truck driver into an AI engineering specialist is not going to be realistic. The old social contract is fraying once again. Hard work no longer guarantees stability. Degrees no longer ensure job security. Wealth, once again, will be concentrated in the hands of the few. In this case, it will be those who know how to run AI. And so just like our forefathers in the late 19th century, we face a choice. Do we let this new wave of disruption deepen inequality and social unrest? And what I think is coming is vast chronic unemployment. Or do we try to be proactive and form a new social contract that recognizes today's realities? But this time, the challenges are also different. Traditional unions struggle in a gig economy, scattered across digital platforms. Electoral politics can be gridlocked by entrenched corporate interests. People are more isolated and distracted, making collective action even more difficult. So let's be honest, it seems like the old tools won't fit this time. Traditional labor unions will not be able to work. People are isolated, like I said. So what are we going to do? We got to come up with new tools, new ways to fight this growing threat of AI consuming every job that there is. One idea that is gaining traction is something called the Universal Basic Income, UBI. Well, what is that? A universal basic income is just like it sounds. It's a guaranteed, unconditional payment to every citizen to cover basic needs like food, housing, and health care. And I think this first came into prominence here in the United States when Andrew Yang, I forget when he was running, maybe it was 2012. He's a politician. I think he's a Silicon Valley guy. And I remember when he first proposed this universal basic income, I'm like, what kind of socialist, communist hogwash is this? But basically what it is because AI is going to take all the jobs away, people have to make money. So you just give them money, right? I dismissed this out of hand when I first heard it. But you know who else kind of believes in this is Elon Musk. Supporters of the UBI say that it provides a safety net when jobs aren't guaranteed. It gives people freedom to retain, innovate, and pursue meaningful work outside of traditional job markets. And it reduces poverty and inequality by sharing some of AI's wealth. So this could be like the modern equivalent of Andrew Carnegie's Gospel of Wealth, right? If you guys remember, Andrew Carnegie had so much money that he could, this is back when the robber barons had more money than the U.S. government. And Andrew Carnegie, towards the end of his life, gave away 90% of his wealth because he was so rich and there was so many poor people. And he called it the Gospel of Wealth, this idea that rich people should give back to the community through donations and charity and philanthropy. So how are people going to pay for this UBI? Well, they suggest it's through an automation dividend or an AI dividend. The massive profits companies make by replacing human labor with machines would go into this fund to pay for the universal basic income. Proposals include a robot tax, higher taxes on corporate profits, or even a public ownership of AI, which would fund the universal basic income. If all this is sounding socialist, it's because it is. Yet, the UBI isn't a cure-all. It doesn't automatically solve access to healthcare, education, housing, not to mention it would be extremely expensive. For example, if you wanted to give adults in the United States a universal basic income of $10,000, which is funny because what is $10,000 a year going to buy you? That would be $2.6 trillion. So because of this, advocates of the UBI claim that a universal basic income would have to be part of a broader plan, which also would include stronger education, democratic AI governance, affordable housing and healthcare. But again, this is all very top-heavy. This is all very socialistic. My question to you, the audience, is this where we're headed no matter what? While I have many serious concerns about the universal basic income, from its cost to its potential to undermine work ethic, to the risk it poses to personal responsibility and economic freedom, it's important to confront the difficult reality. The total or near total loss of all jobs due to AI and automation will force society's hand. If millions of people find themselves without meaningful work or income, governments may feel compelled to implement something like UBI as a last resort to maintain societal stability. Just this week, President Trump floated the idea of paying off young people's student loans. Now, if you guys remember, President Biden kind of got in trouble with this because he, to some degree, did, but he tried to pay off student loans. Now, he did it as an attempt to buy votes, and conservatives railed against him. But it's interesting that now Trump is thinking about doing the same thing. And while I think it is political, I think he is doing it for political reasons, I also think our leaders are seeing the economic reality of people are swimming in debt, and the jobs and the wages are not going to climb us out of it. And here's what I'm mostly worried about with the dominance of AI. Imagine waking up one day and you find that your job, the one thing that structured your days, defined your skills, gave you a sense of purpose, is gone. Not just your job, but millions of others. AI does everything. And Elon Musk has talked about this. And what I just find interesting is he acts like it's not a big deal. But Elon Musk on several podcasts has made the argument that AI is going to be doing everything. So we are going to be free from all work. At first, you might feel relief. Wow, I don't have to do any more tedious tasks. I have more free time. I have a chance to do what I really wanted. But as the days turn into weeks and weeks turn into months, something else sets in, a creepy emptiness. Because for many people, work is more than just a paycheck. It's a source of identity. It's a social connection. There's pride and meaning and dignity in work. What are we going to do sitting on our butts all day? This is when depression inevitably kicks in. You guys have all heard the story of the man that works 30, 40 years, retires, but he doesn't really have a plan. He just kind of retires, and he doesn't do anything, like he has no structure. And you've heard the stories, the anecdotal stories of people die. So they've worked 30, 40 years, and then they retire, and they don't have any structure in their life, and their health declines, and they die, right? People were not meant to sit around doing nothing. Psychologists call this purpose deprivation. When people lack meaningful activities or goals, rates of depression, anxiety, and substance abuse skyrocket. Loneliness spreads. In a world where AI nearly does everything better and faster, many humans will feel obsolete, not just economically, but existentially. Consider this: millions of people who trained for years in professions like law, journalism, education, find their skills outsourced by AI. Their daily routines evaporate, replaced by endless hours of uninstructed time. Social roles based on work status, a big part of how we relate to one another, they all become meaningless. You guys, I have to admit, this sounds like hell on earth. I mean, this sounds like a miserable existence. And I know many of us out there, most of us out there, don't like the job we have and despise our boss. And we just hate getting up in the morning to go to a job that we hate. But could you imagine waking up every day with nothing to do? We tie so much of our identity by what we do. Someone will ask, what do you do when you meet somebody for the first time? Oh, hi, Jim. Well, what do you do? You get, I'm a teacher, I'm a nurse, I'm a software engineer. But what happens when those labels no longer exist? We have to start thinking in terms of the dystopian vision isn't just about poverty. It's about the loss of belonging. In this void of purpose and economic displacement, there's a dangerous temptation: control. Governments and powerful corporations might try to fill in the gap by imposing strict social order, closely monitoring behavior under the guise of public safety and social stability. And this scenario isn't just theoretical. It echoes real-world systems like China's social credit model, where surveillance and behavior regulations are used to enforce compliance and manage society. And we have to ask ourselves today, boys and girls, is China's model the model that will be of all governments in the future? You know, the Industrial Revolution forced societies to rethink things like work, fairness, and human dignity. And today, AI challenges us again, but on a more deeper level. While the second industrial revolution replaced human labor and animal labor, this new industrial revolution is going to replace our mental labor at a scale and speed like nothing has ever seen before. The reality is stark. Jobs are going to vanish. Governments may feel pressure to step in and use totalitarian tactics to keep society stable. And the thing I'm most worried about is work will be meaningless. Millions will face the existential crisis of a loss of purpose, identity, and community. So the question just isn't, what will AI do, but what will we do? Are we going to sit back on our little devices and let AI do all the work? Are we going to be the fat people in WALL-E in our little automated buggies, drinking our Slurpees, talking to people on the screen, sitting right next to each other, and we just let the ship tell us when it's daytime, tell us when it's nighttime, tell us what clothes to wear, what clothes not to wear? Or are we going to fight for our humanity? Something that makes us special in the universe, and especially here on Earth, is the human capacity to innovate, to be creative, to be thinkers, to be people of feeling and emotion, something a machine will never be able to do. Here at Professor Liberty, we seek to educate, inspire, and restore. If you like this podcast, please go to Apple iTunes and give me a 5-star rating on Apple Podcasts, You can also do me better by giving me a written review. I needed some new written reviews to push my podcast further out into the ether. You can also follow us on Facebook. Also, for you teachers, check out teacherspayteachers.com. Go to Professor Liberty, and you can help me financially by buying some of my worksheets and activities and lessons that you can use in your own classroom or homeschool environments. Until next time, go throughout the land and proclaim liberty.